Have you ever noticed that when life feels overwhelming, you don't necessarily crave a particular flavor, you crave a particular texture? Maybe it's toast, crackers, popcorn, cereal, carrots, or perhaps you found yourself thinking, I don't know what I want to eat, but I know I want something crunchy. If that sounds familiar, you're certainly not alone. Today, we're going to explore why crunchy foods can feel so incredibly satisfying for many autistic adults, and why it might have much less to do with taste than you think. Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Bays. I'm a researcher in nutritional psychiatry, and I focus on how nutrition impacts mental health, particularly in autistic adults. One of the things I find fascinating is that we often talk about food as though it's all about flavor, but eating is actually an incredibly rich sensory experience. Every bite provides information through touch, sound, temperature, movement, smell, and taste. And today I'd like to explore why crunchy foods seem to hold such a special place for many autistic adults, and what the research tells us about this, and how understanding our sensory preferences can help us approach eating with more curiosity and less judgment. So, to start with, imagine two foods that taste quite similar. For example, fresh bread and toast, or a boiled potato and potato chips. The flavors might overlap, but the eating experience is completely different. One is soft and quiet, the other is crisp, noisy, and resistant. That's because texture isn't simply something we noticed. It's part of the experience itself. Sometimes what we're craving isn't a flavor, it's a feeling. And that shift in perspective can be incredibly validating. One thing I think many people don't realize is just how many senses are involved in eating. We don't only taste food, we also experience texture, sound, pressure, movement, temperature, smell, even vibration through the jaw. Our mouth contains an extraordinary number of sensory receptors. Every bite sends a huge amount of information to the brain. Research has shown that texture and sound play a surprisingly important role in how satisfying we find foods, not just their flavor. And because autistic people often experience sensory information differently, it's perhaps not surprising that these characteristics can become especially meaningful. So, why might crunchy foods feel particularly appealing? We don't have all the answers yet, but there are a few ideas that may help explain why. Firstly, crunch is incredibly predictable. Each bite gives similar sensory feedback. You generally know exactly what to expect, and predictability can reduce uncertainty. Second, crunch provides lots of sensory information all at once. There's the sound, the resistance, the pressure, the texture changing as you chew, the movement of your jaw. For many people, that's simply a satisfying sensory experience. And finally, many autistic adults describe crunchy foods as feeling grounding or regulating. While we still need more research to fully understand why, these lived experiences are both common and important. Of course, not everyone enjoys crunchy foods. Some autistic adults strongly prefer smooth textures, warm foods, creamy foods, foods that require very little chewing, and that's important too. The goal isn't to suggest that one sensory preference is better than the other. It's simply to recognize that sensory qualities matter far more than people often realize. One idea I've been thinking about recently is this. What if we stopped asking, what do I feel like eating? And instead asked, what kind of sensory experience does my nervous system need today? That question opens up a completely different way of thinking. Perhaps today you need something crunchy, tomorrow something smooth, another day something warm or something cold. Rather than seeing these changing preferences as inconsistency, we might begin to understand them as our nervous system responding to different circumstances. One practical strategy that some people find helpful is thinking about foods according to their sensory qualities. For example, crunchy might be toast, crackers, popcorn, carrots, cereal. Smooth might be yogurt, soup, mashed potato. Chewy might be bagels, dried fruit, gummy lollies. Cold might be smoothies, frozen berries. Warm might be porridge, herbal teas, soup. Instead of organizing foods only by nutrients, we can also think about the sensory experience they provide. I don't think these two ways of thinking compete with each other. I think they complement each other. I also think it's important to reduce some of the shame around these preferences. Some people might hear things like, why do you always eat crunchy foods? Can't you just eat something else? But when we understand that eating is a sensory experience, not simply a nutritional one, those preferences begin to make much more sense. Rather than asking, why am I like this? We can ask, what is my nervous system responding to today? For many people, that's a much kinder question. If you've ever found yourself reaching for crunchy foods without really knowing why, I hope today's video has helped you see that there may be much more going on than simply enjoying the taste. Eating isn't only about nutrients, it's also about the sensory experience. And understanding those experiences can help us approach food with greater curiosity, flexibility, and self-compassion. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Are you someone who loves crunchy foods, or do you find yourself drawn to a completely different sensory experience? I'd really love to hear what textures your nervous system seems to seek out. You might also find my previous videos helpful as well, so check those out. And if you're interested in more evidence-based neuroaffirming approaches to nutrition and mental well-being, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.